Hello there. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how you can create this Luke Skywalker Return of the Jedi lightsaber entirely from cardboard. Last year I made a similar tutorial for creating the Anakin Skywalker Graflex lightsaber that you guys seemed really interested in, so I thought tackling Luke's lightsaber next would be fun. If you watched my last video about Luke's lightsaber, you'll know that I created a fusion model based on all the real dimensions of the original V2 prop. I used that model to create the template for this cardboard replica, and because it's based on that model, this cardboard replica is actually a little more geometrically accurate than my aluminum V2 replica. In order to build this replica, you're going to need cereal box cardboard, thicker corrugated cardboard, a hot glue gun, and scissors. If you want to give it a prop-accurate worn finish like I did, you're also going to need aluminum tape and black paint. And if you want to follow along with this build at home, the template that I created is available in my Etsy store. Now, the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is cut out a bunch of circles of very specific sizes in a very specific order. You'll need to cut out 10 of the circles labeled M on my template and 20 of the circles labeled L. Then you're going to stack and glue them all together to create the frame for the grenade section, stacking 2 L circles in between every M circle. Next, you're going to cut out 17 of the circles labeled N and stack them all together. This creates the frame for the Graflex clamp spacer. Then you're going to cut out 5 K circles. Not 5,000 circles, just 5 of the circles labeled K. When those are stacked, they become the grenade neck. After that, you'll cut out 11 of the circles labeled O. When stacked, those become the frame for the booster section. Then you'll cut out, and stay with me here, 2 of the J circles, 1 I circle, 4 H circles, and 6 G circles. Yes, I know there are only 5 in the picture, but don't listen to the picture, listen to me. Cut out 6. Stack those all together in the order I said to cut them out, and if you've forgotten, I've helpfully labeled them in this picture. This creates the frame for the grenade wind vane. Now you're going to cut out 2 F circles, 5 E circles, 2 D circles, and 1 C circle. Stack those all together and you've created the frame for the emitter. Alright, how about something that's not a circle? Cut out 7 of the Q pieces from the template. Take 4 of them and just stack them together, but with the other 3, I'm going to ask you guys to do something that's not on the template. But don't gasp so loud, I know you guys can do it. Take the other 3 and cut the fins a little bit shorter on each one. Q1 should have the fins about 3/4 as long as the normal Q piece, Q2s should be half as long, and Q3s should be 1/4 as long. Then put Q3 and Q1 on top of the stack you made earlier, and put Q2 on the bottom. Cut out 4 P circles and 2 R circles and stack them on the top and bottom, and congratulations, you've created the inner frame for the pommel piece. Attach that to the end of the saber, which at this point should look something like this. Finally, cut out 3 A circles and 1 B circle and stack them together to form the inner frame of the emitter nipple. Now you've got an entire saber made from cardboard circles, which is very flexible and fun to play around with. The next thing you're going to do is cut out the numbered rectangles from the template and start wrapping them around the circular sections to cover up the corrugation and make them look and feel more rigid. I also covered the rectangles themselves in aluminum tape so that I could weather them later, but you can paint them silver or even leave them their regular color if you prefer. Generally, the rectangle labeled 1 covers the A circles, rectangle 2 covers the B circles, 3 covers C, and so on and so forth. That's true for the first 11 rectangles, but if you get tripped up at all, I labeled them in this image to help you keep track. You're going to need to cut out 19 of the piece numbered 19. Since it's not a full circle, you can bring the ends together to create an angled loop of cardboard. You'll need to do that in between each of the grenade grooves and glue them in place, which is what's going to give them their characteristic ridges. This is done by pushing piece 19 in between 2 of the L circles and wrapping it around and bringing the ends together so that it fills the space in between the first L circle and the edge of the M circle. You'll have to do this twice between every set of M circles, one for each L circle that separates them. Again, I've labeled the sequence in this photo to hopefully clear up any confusion about where things need to be placed. You're also going to be wrapping duplicates of the rectangle labeled 12 around each M circle, covering the corrugation in between each set of 19s. Repeat that process for every groove, and it doesn't matter if some of the grooves end up thicker than others. In fact, you should try to create a little unevenness because the grooves on the screen-used V2 prop were famously uneven as well, so if anything, it's just a little bit more authentic. Once the grenade section is wrapped with the 19s and 12s, you can wrap the rectangles labeled 13, 14, and 15 around the corrugation of the N and O circles that make up the clamp, spacer, and booster section. Finally, we're going to be plating the pommel section, which is the other complex part of the build. You're going to need to cut out 6 of the pieces labeled 22. Yes, I know there's only 5 in the photo. Cut out 6 and glue them on the ends of the pommel blocks. Then cut out 6 more of the pieces labeled 20 and place them in between each block. And I also wrapped rectangle number 17 around the pommel at this point too. Next, cut out 12 of the pieces labeled 21 and use them to cover the sides of each block. Make sure the longer point of the 22 shape is lined up with the Q3, Q1 side of the pommel. If this is all getting a bit confusing, I've included another reference photo here. It's just like painting by numbers, isn't it? Finally, you can put the piece labeled 23 on top of each block and the pieces labeled 24 on the bottom of each block. Based on the template, they should be a perfect fit, but if there's any excess hanging over the sides, you can just trim that off. What you're left with is a solid Luke V2 saber blank. You can do whatever you want from here, turn it into a hero, a V3, whatever you want. The rest of the template parts are for the V2 though, so I'm going to keep showing you how to make that one, but I wanted to call out that fork in the road for if you want to make a different version of Luke's hilt. Cut out the Pac-Man shaped piece labeled 25 and the rectangle labeled 26. These two pieces are going to create the knurled cone knob on the V2. I used an X-Acto blade to score the aluminum tape on the rectangle to create a knurling effect, which is an optional extra step. I folded piece number 25 into a cone by closing Pac-Man's mouth and gluing it shut, and then wrapping the knurled rectangle around the circumference and gluing that shut as well. The knob gets glued into place on the booster section. Just make sure to put the Graphics clamp at the 12 o'clock and the cone knob at around 3:30. Speaking of the Graphics clamp, I'm including the same template that I created for the Anakin Skywalker lightsaber clamp for this one, so I'd recommend checking out that video for assembly instructions. I did modify the template to include a longer clamp lever and clamp bar block, which should be pretty easy to put together, but if you want an added touch of realism, you can also pick up a replica clamp lever and block from Wanawanga. I'm currently using a replica lever and block set in my cardboard V2, and I think it's the little details like that that really sell the overall look of the saber personally, but again, this is optional and all the materials to make every part of the clamp from cardboard are included in the template if you choose to go that route. The last thing you'll need is a clamp card. Again, I'm using a spare replica card, which you can get for super cheap, like under $5, but you can also get away with just printing out a picture of the Luke V2 card and cutting it out as an insert, or even carving the design into cardboard and aluminum tape. Finally, once every piece of the saber has been assembled, you can give the whole saber a black wash and mask off the silver sections that you want to keep. If you used aluminum tape like me, then you can use sandpaper to physically sand away the paint, or if you really want to go the extra mile, you can pick up the Trooper Trent stencils to get a super accurate paint job on your V2. I also wrapped the upper neck of my saber in gaffer's tape, just like the screen used prop, but once you get into super fine minutia like the gaffer's tape and the mystery chunk and the piece of fishing line that the vast majority of people that are looking at the prop don't know about, we really get into personal preferences on what level of detail you want to achieve. And there you have it, folks, Luke Skywalker's Return of the Jedi lightsaber entirely from cardboard. You know, as an independent filmmaker, whose props and wardrobe budget is frequently incredibly low, I'm always looking for innovative ways to create props on a budget without compromising accuracy. And I have to say, the proportions and finish on this saber prop came out a lot better than I expected. Sometimes I amaze even myself. The finish that you can get with cardboard and aluminum tape can be really hard to distinguish from just real aluminum, and something like this is totally serviceable as a stunt or belt hanger prop. In fact, I would go so far as to say that this is a better replica of the Luke V2 than some of the actual stunt replicas they used in Return of the Jedi. Anyway, I had a lot of fun creating this new cardboard saber, and I hope you guys do as well if you decide to give it a shot. Let me know if there are any other props you guys would like to see recreated from cardboard, and until then, I'll see you in hell.